Back to school raises concerns about vaping. Welcome back to Techstination. I'm Fred Fishkin. Joining us from the American Lung Association is Dr. Panagis Galiatsatos. Good morning, and thanks for taking the time.
Oh, an honor to be here. Thank you so much for allowing us to have this conversation today.
It's important. And the use of e-cigarettes among students has been rising. Give us the overview of what's going on.
So the newest data shows that about 10% of youth in the nation have been using electronic cigarettes, and in some states are disproportionately higher than other states. But as just a lung doctor and as a parent, my biggest concern is we have a generation that we are trying to avoid the missteps we saw from a prior generation where combustible cigarettes were introduced, they got addicted, and then decades later, they became my patients. They became patients overall plagued with lung cancers to COPD and emphysema. The youth usage of these electronic cigarettes with their own chemicals and toxins, that's our fear. And the addiction, that's our fear, that they'll begin using them now and turn into patients decades later. So that's why we're here having these conversations to invest in our youth, especially as we send them off to school for a brighter future.
There may be some confusion, especially among adults, I suppose, thinking that these were safer than cigarettes, that they were a way for people to get off of cigarettes initially. So tell us why we should be concerned.
Right. So adults, if they want to view electronic cigarettes as a harm reduction strategy, that means they're comparing these to combustible cigarettes. And that's something to work out with their own physicians in order to see if that makes sense for them. For youth, that isn't a harm reduction strategy, right? They're breathing in air or using vaping. So there's not a relative risk conversation. Here, it's an absolute risk. So if these kids get all the risk of electronic cigarettes without any of the benefit that those adults will pose from a harm reduction strategy. These electronic cigarettes still have chemicals in them, still have toxins in them. Already, we begin to see counts of refractory asthma, meaning hard to treat asthma. We've begun to see higher cases of bronchitis. During the COVID early years, youth using e-cigarettes had higher severe COVID risks than youth who didn't use e-cigarettes. So the safety conversation is out the window for youth who one day are just breathing in air and the next day are breathing in the toxins from electronic cigarettes. That's why we're making such a point to emphasize we want to protect these young lungs that continue to grow, that if you rob them of their potential now, they'll be robbed of their health later.
Are there signs that the parents should look for? I mean, years ago, I remember parents smelling the breath of students coming home from school. Were you smoking?
Yeah. So, and that kind of strategy is actually out the window to some extent for electronic cigarettes when we compare them to the traditional combustible cigarettes, right? Electronic cigarettes, the way they look is different, and the way they smell is also different. So trying to figure that out, I'm telling parents, it's even hard for us as physicians, keeping up with that technology. It's really tough. I've had patients come in, these youth, bringing me their electronic cigarettes, and sometimes we'll play a game like, hey, which one do you think is the device? And I'm like, I don't know. What I usually actually tell parents is to take two approaches. One, to be proactive, have the conversation now. Again, this is the first day of school for many people in the country. You're sending off your kids to a brighter future. Talk to them about things that you want them to avoid, right? Don't speed. Don't vape. Have these conversations, be proactive. And then after that, if you do find that your child does use, one thing first is I would say, go in there, no stigma, shame, or judgment. Talk to your pediatrician, right? Bring in a team to really help your child, but then really begin to try to understand why they're using it. Every patient of mine that's a youth user of electronic cigarettes doesn't just use it out of just randomness. They use it for purposes, just like people who, when they use traditional cigarettes. It fills their time with boredom. It fills a way to reduce their anxiety, reduce their stress. It's good to use it with other peers. You'll find that this is a reaction to their life. And so you'll try to counsel them through that and work with their pediatricians. Because if you can break that habit now, you are saving them and their lungs from potential candidacies of being patients decades later.
Let's take a look at a PSA created by the American Lung Association and the Ad Council.
There are a lot of temptations facing young people today, like electronic cigarettes and skateboarding. Each vape pod can contain the same amount of nicotine as a pack of cigarettes. This can lead today's youth to a lifelong addiction and severe lung damage. Recall and consider the facts before making a poor decision.
The health class film guy isn't the best person to talk to your kid about vaping.
Got a few minutes?
You are. Start the conversation with your child about vaping today.
You watch this and you wonder, okay, it is up to the parent, and you've covered some of this ground already, but are there best ways to break the ice to start this discussion?
And again, for many parents, this is going to be a hard thing. And also, I just don't want to put it all on the parents. I mean, maybe there's an uncle, there's an aunt, there's grandparents, there's coaches, there's teachers, anyone that's really invested in youth, right? To break the ice, we would suggest go to talkaboutvaping.org, right? The website by the Lung Association and the Ad Council. There we have tips and insight into electronic cigarettes. And then what we would suggest, just like a musician takes notes and knows his audience and plays it for the audience appropriately, take those key talking points and tailor them to the child, to the youth that you want to get through, right? That makes an impression. That, I'm telling you, makes all the difference in the world. For many of the kids who end up stopping vaping in my clinic, it's because of the support they got from their parents and their family, not because of the doctor. They got it from their family. I just played a role in a bigger picture. So for the parents out there to break the ice, I would strongly suggest going to the website, talkaboutvaping.org, and begin to think how you're going to have these conversations with your child.
And very often the kids are mimicking what they see at home or among other adults. How important is it for adults maybe to break this habit?
Yeah, so for any adult using these products, and again, even say you're an adult who is viewing this as a way to get off traditional cigarettes, that's fine, right? As long as you have that conversation with your doctor. But what's not fine is showing this behavior to the child. You want to do everything you can to make sure that your child sees the best versions of you. And it has to be with a responsibility. As you tackle your own health, realize you want to make sure that your child, even with harm reduction strategies, doesn't mimic or take that on. Because one word that got manipulated greatly in the youth usage of the epidemic of electronic cigarettes is the word safe. Right? This isn't safer than air, right? There's no harm reduction for a child. So for any adult out there, remember, it is our responsibility to model the best for our kids, and making sure that they're not attracted to these products is really one of the first key steps of promoting the best behaviors we can.
That website again is talkaboutvaping.org. Dr. Panagis Galiatsatos, thank you so much for your work and for taking time with us.
Thank you for allowing the conversation.